Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Dill. I think Sharon Moore and Michigan are in for a very busy offseason, especially in the next coming weeks. Friday afternoon, we talked about quarterbacks that we would like to see Michigan target in the transfer portal. I think another big offseason story is going to be the offensive coordinator. And I think I would be very surprised as a Michigan fan myself to not see Michigan get into the offensive coordinator market. Like at the end of the day, I know the quarterback play has not been good enough for Michigan in 2024. The offensive scheme and play calling has been largely a disaster. And I would be very surprised if Michigan is not a real player in terms of going out and getting a new offensive coordinator over the next couple of weeks. I got 6 names that I came up with that I would like to see Michigan go after for that offensive coordinator job. Let's run it back the same way we did Friday. I'm going to throw the names at you. You're going to go 1 through 10, how excited you would be for these offensive coordinator candidates. Now, before we get into it, as always, to the Michigan fans, it was hot in the comment section Friday afternoon when we talked about quarterback transfer portal targets. I expect this episode to maybe even be a little bit hotter because this is a sore spot for us Michigan fans who had to endure this 2024 offense. Would love to hear some names. Would love to hear some ideas in terms of where you would like to see Michigan go at the offensive coordinator position. I have a feeling this is a storyline we're going to be talking a lot about over the next couple of weeks. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, first name on the list, Tom Herman, former Texas head coach, former FAU head coach, relieved of his duties as of Tuesday this week. Dill, what do you think about Tom Herman? And it's reported that he's looking for an offensive coordinator job at the Power 4 level. How are we feeling about Tom Herman, next Michigan offensive coordinator?
I'm going to be honest. So the guys who I think are going to be in the market, he's probably not the highest on my list. I'd
Ooh.
probably give him about a 5. I think one of the fundamental issues is you look at the quarterbacks he's been successful with, Braxton Miller, Greg Ward, Sam Ellinger to an extent, never really developed a particularly elite thrower of the football. And I think Michigan, if they were going to take on a Tom Herman, like everything about what they've done in the past handful of years would kind of need to change because they'd really need to do a 180 in terms of what their offense looks like. Because again, Tom Herman, much more of a spread guy, something like that. And again, you might want that. That might be something you're looking for as a Michigan fan. But I think there's a lot of coordinators who I think can maybe be a bit more balanced than what we've seen from Tom Herman in
Is
his
that a
career.
bad thing,
Also,
though?
I don't love the way the FAU job ended up. That didn't smell right. Him
So,
firing the defensive
100%
coordinator.
agree. Tom Herman as a head coach, not good. Like we've seen that time and time again. And I think a lot of Michigan fans understand that. But look, he's the opposite of a culture guy. And I don't really know Tom Herman that well. But when you look at his programs at Texas, at FAU, in terms of a manager of a locker room, not great. In terms of a schemer of an offense, pretty damn good. Like as an offensive coordinator, Tom Herman knows how to do it. And Dill, is it that bad that we are changing the scheme and how we want to run this offense? Where even back to the 2023 year where you won a national championship, did that have a little bit more to do with a top 10 NFL draft pick, 2 NFL wide receivers, the best tight end in the country, and an offensive line that was just filled with NFL dudes? I don't think Michigan changing their approach on offense is that bad of an idea because you kind of
But
see
I
with
think there's like a better approach. Like the way Lane Kiffin did it at Alabama was kind of the way I'd envision it, where it wasn't going to a totally different system. Like again, a much more aggressive, much more involved in the passing attack and trying
yep.
to score some points. But Alabama still could run the ball physically. They still had quarterbacks who were getting drafted high and all those things you were kind of looking for.
You
You look at
saw
Tom
that.
Herman, he's just not putting big time NFL guys into the draft. That's kind of
But
where
that's where I disagree, though. Is like I'm not interested. Okay, I shouldn't say that. Like I'm interested in having quarterbacks get developed into NFL dudes. I'm much more interested in offense that puts up points. Like there's a difference between like Will Levis, like great NFL prospect, was not a very good college football quarterback. I don't put that much onus on are you an NFL guy at quarterback. I put more of an onus on are you scoring points at the quarterback position. Everywhere Tom Herman's been, they scored some points. And so I kind of understand where you're coming from. Like, I think the best example is what his last year as the OC at Ohio State, JT Barrett, Cardell Jones kind of had to work some magic flip flopping with those quarterbacks. put together a national championship caliber offense. I'm not necessarily, Tom Herman's not the favorite name on this list for me either, but I would be very intrigued with Tom Herman. And I think one other thing that
Well,
I kind of like,
put your number on it.
yeah,
We'll like
it'd
where
probably be more of a 7. And because there's another aspect to this, and that is Tom Herman, although a bad head coach, has been a head coach of a major college football program. And I don't think it's a bad idea to get an OC that has kind of been in Sharon Moore's shoes, because you can tell Sharon Moore's kind of flying by the seat of his pants. Deservingly so got the Michigan job, but you can tell he's a green head coach. I would not hate to surround him with a guy like Tom Herman, who's kind of been in Sharon Moore's shoes and knows not necessarily how to do it, but also has made some mistakes and knows how to adjust some of those mistakes. That Tom Herman coming in as a 7, this is probably my number one choice. And again, this might be a little bit of a stretch, but Coach Locksley at Maryland, they're 4-6, 1-6 in conference play. They get finish up with Iowa, Penn State. They're probably going to have a losing record, miss a bowl game. I wouldn't be surprised if Coach Locks is looking for a job this offseason. This would be my number one choice. How you feeling about Coach Locksley?
he'd be a 9 or a 10, like pretty much
Dynamite.
as high as you get. I look like he might just leave on his own accord. Like I'm not convinced at this point in his career he's totally interested in trying to turn around the Maryland team that just has all the disadvantages in the world of being competitive in the place they are. So he's a guy who I almost feel like could do something like what Chip Kelly did. And I think it makes a ton of sense. I think, again, a guy who's done a really good job developing quarterbacks. I think the way he worked with Tagovailoa, really quite impressed, frankly. But also, I think just fits a little bit better. I don't think it's like, again, Tom Herman, like awesome coordinator for sure. He does put some points up. But I think like it's a smoother transition with the way Loxley's run his offenses, where again, he still runs the ball. They can still be physical. But I just think he'll do a better job with the quarterbacks and get the passing
Yeah,
game going.
I this would be my probably favorite hire. Really good recruiter everywhere he's been. Obviously at Alabama, that kind of headlined it. Knows how to recruit the DMV, which is where Michigan likes to go for a lot of talent. Did a good job with Tua. Did a good job with his brother Tolly as well. Quite frankly, doing a good job with Billy Edwards, who I don't think is a very good quarterback, but is not playing horrible in the Big Ten. How about the wide receivers? It doesn't get any better at developing wide receivers. Dill, you look at that Alabama team: Jalen Waddle, Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, Devonta Smith. Like the laundry list of names that have been under Coach Locke at the wide receiver position as well, which has been a sore spot for Michigan. That also entices me. Coach Locke, probably my favorite name. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's looking for an OC job. And I think Michigan should absolutely jump on this one. They'll go into another one that is probably not that high, but probably worth mentioning, and that's Phil Longo. Obviously, just got fired at Wisconsin. So the optics of Michigan going out and getting a Wisconsin offensive coordinator that was just fired, not great. I wouldn't love it, but I also wouldn't be super upset about it. And here's why. I think Phil Longo took over a Wisconsin team that was built to run 12 personnel, run the football 60% of the time. That's just that's how that Wisconsin team was built under Paul Chryst. Luke Fickell takes it over, and they try to kind of implement what Phil Longo does, a little bit more of an air raid scheme. And you could just tell there's a disconnect between the quarterbacks they had on the roster and the pass catchers. I think you could do a
I'll be
little
kind
bit.
of frank. I'd much prefer Phil Longo to Tom Herman right now. I think frankly this was a bit of Fickle panicking. Like he hasn't quite gotten the positions right that he needs to get right. I think he
Agreed.
came in to be like, we're going to get physical again. We're going to coach good teams on both sides lines of scrimmage. Wisconsin's frankly not particularly great either position. I think that's a problem. I think their results. I mean, Fickle had to make change. I think that's kind of where he is. But you look, Longo hasn't had really a chance. Tyler Van Dyke comes in as a portal quarterback, immediately gets hurt. You look at last year, that was just a disaster what they had at the quarterback spot. So I look like he hasn't really had a chance to get a guy that's kind of his guy into that program and really work with him. But in the past, he's been really good at it. You look at his time at Ole Miss, North Carolina, developing really high-level quarterback play. I frankly think Phil Longo had to fall on the sword for Luke Fickell. I thought that
Agreed.
was a bit of a cowardly move, to be very frank. I think he's a really good coordinator.
I don't know if I'd say but it was a little bit scapegoaty. I probably would agree with that. And at the end of the day, Phil Longo was responsible for the offense, and the offense was not producing. It was just a tough spot where they're asking Phil Longo to run his offense with just not the personnel that fits. And I don't think he had enough time to get the personnel in. I would be willing to give Phil Longo a shot. And I think you said it right. And this is, at least in my opinion, a really, really important aspect when you're talking about OCs. Like, how do they develop quarterbacks? Like, if you have a good quarterback, you're probably going to have a good offense. Like, give me an offensive coordinator that has a proven track record of developing quarterbacks. Phil Longo, especially at a time with UNC, Sam Howell, Drake May, really, really strong.
And you can do it a different way. Like, obviously, Matt Corral's a different quarterback than Drake May and Sam Howell. So you look like a guy who I think you're pretty comfortable can take different quarterbacks with different skill sets. He can take your first rounder and make him a first rounder. He can take a guy who probably isn't exactly that type of player, but still be a really effective offense.
Yeah, knowing how to build an offense around your personnel, which Michigan has just done horribly this year, is also an important talking point. Brendan Marion, the go-go offense. 10. I'll say this, 10. All right, I'll let you sell the people.
I'd be so excited for Brendan Marion. Again, you look at a guy who's going to bring some energy on the recruiting trail. I think he'd be dynamite recruiting at Michigan. I think you look another guy who, frankly, I think can win a bunch of different ways. You look at last year, a little bit more of a passing attack. You see this year, had to lean a bit more on the rushing attack, but it's been really effective both years. Him and Barry Odom really helped turn that UNLV program around. I think they did it really quickly. I'd be super stoked for Brendan Marion. I think he's just a really innovative offensive coordinator. And I also think he's like super hungry. He's like trying to get his shot at a Texas job, at a Michigan, those big jobs. I think he comes in, he gives you 100%. I don't think you have to worry about that. I'd be stoked for Brendan Marion.
There's a lot to like about him, and what you said. The only question, and in my opinion, it's a big question. I think we differ on this. He runs that go-go offense that you could describe at times as gimmicky. Would that play at the Big Ten level? I think that's the question, and I think even more importantly, does Sharon Moore want to go to that kind of offense?
Yeah, but I don't know that I inherently agree. Again, you mix in some option concepts for sure, but he made Jaden Maiava like legitimate high-level quarterback that USC then takes a look at and is like, oh, we kind of want this guy. Like,
agreed.
I don't think it's just his gimmick. You throw a guy who can't throw the ball out there and just start running around like crazy. It's a little bit innovative. It's certainly unique. But I think you look at his coaching from Coach Sark and on, where like he's a guy who I just think is, I mean, he's doing what he needs to at UNLV, but Michigan needs a little bit of spice. I think, again, they can run the ball. They can throw the ball in his offense. I just think he does a good job of getting an offense that works for his personnel, whether it's quarterback who's throwing, whether it's quarterback who's
Is there an element where you would be concerned that, like, okay, this is like a brand new, like he pretty much like almost like invented like a brand new offense? Is there a concern that, like, hey, there's 2 years, 3 years of film on it now, like defenses start getting adjusted to it, and then can he like pivot there? That'd be another concern. And again, I'm not necessarily arguing. I just knew you would be having him a 10, so I'm kind of playing devil's advocate. I think there's a lot of Michigan fans that'd be fired up for Brendan Marion. 2 more names I got there. One, Tino Sunseri. We've talked about this a lot. If you're looking to hire a staff around you, like, why not take a look at Indiana? Why Tino Sunseri? One, young recruiter, and that's something that Michigan wants. And you look at some of the struggles Michigan has had on offense, a lot of it is just you got to get the talent coming into this program, specifically in the skill position areas. Tino Sunseri is an elite recruiter, and I think more importantly has done a very good job with quarterbacks. It's a short track record, but it's a strong track record. And what he did with Curtis Rourke, who was a solid MAC quarterback at Ohio, and now is top 5 in Heisman voting at Indiana, that's you love to see that. The only question I think with Tino Sunseri is how much is he playing the role? Like how responsible is he for all that success Indiana's having? Because you have Mike Shanahan there. You have obviously Kurt Signetti, who's very good with offenses. 1 to 10, Tino Sunseri, who you got?
I mean, honestly, probably a 5, but that's only because why not just go get Shanahan in that case? Like, again, I don't think that's off limits for Michigan.
Agreed.
I mean, they could certainly go poach him, so why not poach his boss, if you will? I would probably go after Shanahan. Again, I'd be pretty happy with Tino Sunseri, but if they were going to go the Indiana route, why not just go for the guy?
Because I think Tino Sunseri is a little bit more of like that up-and-coming, like could be a dynamite hire. And I agree, and it's kind of hard to decipher like who's responsible for what in that Indiana staff. Like I do think Kurt Cignetti's probably playing a pretty damn big role in what the offense looks like, if we're being honest. But this guy, he's been very good wherever he's at. Obviously, Kurt Cignetti likes him a lot, has brought him along everywhere he's been to. So I think Tino Sunseri is interesting, and they'll obviously the flashiest name, Dan Mullen. How are we feeling about him?
4. I don't love Dan Mullen. I don't think you're going to get a particularly hungry coach. He didn't feel hungry at Florida. I just I look, and I don't think he'd take this job. I think his ego is far too big. But also, I just don't think you're going to get a guy.
He said he's open. Wait, time out though. He did say he's open. I don't think he's actually said this, but the reports are that he's open for an offensive coordinator job. So that is a thing that I think
but he'd be working for Schroen, who's 15 years younger than him. There's something about Dan Mullen that I just don't love. I think, again, the attitude, I'll recruit when I have to recruit. It's just I don't know. At this point in his career, is he really going to go give you an A+ effort like a guy like Sunseri or Brendan Marion would give you? There's something about Dan Mullen that the way things kind of happen, and then I just don't know that he gives you an A+ effort. So I again, obviously a really good offensive coordinator, maybe not the greatest head coach at the high levels.
Pretty damn good head coach too, if we're being honest.
No, but again, it was. I think there is that level. You need to have a different mentality at Florida than you have at Mississippi State. Mississippi State, you can probably do a little bit more with just pure scheme and coaching guys up. I think when you're at the big leagues, the Floridas, the Michigans, the Ohio States, everything needs to be dialed in. And the fact that he's not willing to do the things he doesn't want to do, that he should know he needs to do to be successful.
Yeah, okay.
I have some huge questions about that.
So that's fair. And I think the other question would be you've been out of the game for 3 years now, and the sport of college football has changed significantly since you were last the head coach of Florida.
I also feel there may be something, and I'm not positive what it is, but there does feel like he's said something on a broadcast that's just got me soured on him, because
I could tell you do not like Dan Mullen. The one thing you love about Dan Mullen is the quarterback development's been elite pretty much everywhere he's been. Going back to Utah, Alex Smith, Dak Prescott at Mississippi State, Tim Tebow at Florida, Kyle Trask at Florida, who is the head coach. There's a good track record there. I'm kind of with you. I'd rather go get, and I don't think Sherrone Moore would want to go this avenue either, but I do think it'd be intriguing if Michigan goes out and hires Dan Mullen. That is for sure.
You didn't give me any names that I hate, that I look at and be like you didn't give me a.
It sounded like you hated Dan Mullen.
You didn't give me Brian Ferentz or something. So again, I don't love Dan Mullen just in general. I think again they're that arrogance that I'm not going to recruit when I don't want to recruit. I kind of hate that mentality for an assistant coach, but it is what it is. The guy obviously is a really good coordinator and developer of players and schemer of an offense.
So your number one is Brendan Marion out of this list?
Yeah. Brendan Marion is the guy.
Yeah. We know. We'll sign out there. Again, let it fly in the comment section. A lot of different ways. And again, I do think this will be a conversation we're having. We're just kind of getting ahead of it, I guess, a little bit. And as Michigan fans, this is the talk we're having, unfortunately, at the end of November. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.